Sergeant Bergdahl wasn't simply a hostage. He was an American prisoner of war, captured on the battlefield. He served the United States with honor and distinction, and we'll have the opportunity eventually to learn what has transpired in the past years. But what's most important now is his health and well-being, that he have the opportunity to recover in peace and security.
We're going to get right to those comments. First half of the Thursday Arena. He is host of The Agenda, heard every morning on SiriusXM. Also a senior fellow at Media Matters and former advisor to Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, Al Gore, and John Kerry's presidential campaign. Welcome, Ari Rabin-Havt. And also joined by veteran political commentator, columnist, and news director for the Tea Party News Network, Scottie Nell Hughes is back in the house. I thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Scottie, I'm going to start with you because we just heard the words of National Security Advisor Susan Rice. That was on June 1st, 2014 on ABC's This Week, where she said Bowe Bergdahl, quote, served the United States with honor and distinction. I have to imagine that that may sit on your tongue like acid.
It does, and it insults every single military person who has actually served with honor. You know, as we're finding out more and more what happened, the one thing that we can all say is that he actually left. He left his troops right there. He went down. That's when they kidnapped him or they captured him. You know, this brings back to the thought, we have this policy in America, no man, leave no soldier left behind. But when he leaves his people behind, do we still have that duty in order to sit here and get him back? And does he deserve a Rose Garden ceremony, as this president decided to do, in order to welcome him home in exchange for 5 terrorists that we know are not necessarily friends to America?
Ari, does this guy deserve any sympathy whatsoever from the American people?
He deserves a trial, and he deserves, if he broke the Uniform Military Code of Justice, he deserves to be punished. I'd rather not outsource our punishment to the Taliban. If he was in fact a deserter, which it looks like he was, then of course he deserves to be punished. You sign up for the military, you don't desert. But at the same time, you sign up for the military, we bring you home, regardless of whether it's home to stand trial or home to an honorable welcome. And I think, look, if he did desert, I'm glad he's standing trial. One thing I should note from the intro, I haven't been at Media Matters in quite some time. That's just one thing to note for
Then
bio.
please do. We thank you very much. We've made the mistake. We will immediately correct that. Here we go. Ari Rabin-Havt is not with Media Matters. There he goes. Has not been there for some time. We'll make that very clear. I'm going to come back then again, though. Ari, I got to come back to you then with regard to this whole sympathy idea here. Because Brooke Baldwin on CNN is the one who said that, and I quote, this is someone who was held for 5 years by terrorists. Is that not, this is what some say, is that not punishment enough? I mean, there are people out there actually seeking sympathy for this guy. Isn't that horribly misguided?
I frankly think it's misguided. I think a judge advocate general and a trial will take place, and and punishment will be decided. And if you desert, you deserve to be punished, and you deserve to be punished by our military justice system, which does actually a good job of this. I think, he was captured by the Taliban. He spent time in their captivity, but that doesn't excuse actions that he took against the military, which he signed up for and made a commitment to.
All right, Scottie, I just got to throw this to you here because here on that almost the same idea, there are those people saying he served years chained to a bed, chained on all fours, locked in a cage. I see you already basically shaking your head back and forth, and I'm going to guess that what you would probably say is he put himself there in the first place.
He put himself there, and now we're hearing tales of him celebrating Christmas with some of the guards, teaching them about Christmas. And I think I even saw a story about badminton being played. It wasn't like he was some of these terrorists that the normal Taliban, how they've been handling them. And he was able, luckily, to keep his head attached to his body as some of the ISIS terrorists handle it. So I don't think he was in what we consider to be a terrorist camp per se that we imagine. But here's the thing that I'll give Ari credit that he said, I agree that he needs to have, the judicial process here in America. I don't think people would have as much of a problem with this if we did not understand the reasoning why we got him back. The fact that we traded 5 very dangerous terrorists that were at Gitmo, who are now within 1 month going to go back out into the public without being under house arrest. That's right there, I think, why people are even more enraged by this whole situation. The fact that this president valued a man who deserted and left his own military folks more than he valued 5 people that people sacrificed their lives to capture. He released the exchange. I think that's right there why the majority of people are very upset over this whole situation.
20 seconds. Your shot back on that one, Ari?
Look, I think, as I said in my opening, I don't think we outsource military justice to the Taliban. I think when you have a guy, it doesn't matter what he did, you get them home. And the president did that, regardless of how.
All right. All right, guys, please stand by a couple of minutes. Rabin-Havt and Scottie Nell Hughes. Everybody's a little fired up. Let's get now to the story that everybody is talking about. A plane crash in the French Alps. It's an accident. No, it's not. What makes one pilot decide to take the lives of others like this, and how safe do you feel? The arena continues. The arena continues. Welcome back, host of The Agenda, heard every morning on SiriusXM Radio, Rabin-Havt, and news director for the Tea Party News Network, Scottie Nell Hughes. All right, Ari, I'm going to start with you on this one. The tragic news coming out of overseas right now, the French Alps, that apparently this plane that was carrying 150 people was purposely slammed into the mountainside by one of the pilots. The first thing that comes to my mind to discuss is every single day, you, me, Scottie, we all get on planes constantly and we fly. We never know who actually is in that cockpit. We don't know who the flight deck person is. We're not sure. Now they're telling us that this person never received psychological training. Seriously, do you feel safe? I mean, putting your life in the hands of people whom you don't know who they are.
I mean, part of, I guess, travel is that, right? And when this plane went down, I heard the words Airbus A320, and when I fly from D.C. to Boston or D.C. to Chicago, it's always on. It typically, like an Airbus A320, seems to be a fairly common plane. We put our lives in the hands of these machines that, frankly, I don't know how to fly, and I know the basic physics, but I don't know specifically how it works. And we have to have a certain level of trust, and I think it's incumbent upon the airlines to make sure the pilots who are flying us are psychologically fit to handle something that can have a mass casualty event.
And I think we've got to point out here before we continue this, one second, let me just bring this in here. 2014 was the safest year on record when it comes down to commercial airliners. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think it was one incident for every few million flights that goes on out there. It's very safe, Ari. So in that sense,
Right.
Shouldn't we at least say that, well, at least here in America, we know that our people here are doing the job and keeping us safe?
Well, I think, look, I fly probably 30 to 50 times a year, and this incident doesn't change my mind about that. It's a necessary part of life. I feel safe. I've never felt in danger on a flight domestically, or frankly, I've flown a lot around the world, including small airplanes between cities in China. I've never really felt unsafe in the air, and this won't change that. I do think there is a responsibility among certain media outlets to cover these things more responsibly. I mean, you almost felt when this story broke, like CNN was like itching for, like, please let it have disappeared. We can have a month-long search for the black box. Please, like, oh, let's pull out the graphics. Like almost an air of excitement to scare people.
Well, I gotta bring this up here into what you're talking about too, because on Fox News this morning, the graphics on it said screams of terror, and the one that I thought was just incredibly insensitive was knocking on death's door. Was what they had for a lower third graphic. I mean, Scottie, let me throw this to you on this one. Just to use that, there are people out here looking at relatives that are dying, knocking on death's door. That goes a little too far.
You know, if it bleeds, it leads. That's the story of journalism today, is people are pushing for ratings. And in a way, they're reflective of what the people are asking for. So it's one of those, who do you give into? But, here's one thing that I do think we need to learn from the situation. They sit there and say the Tea Party wants no government. No, we want limited government. And in this case, this is why it is good to have a solid federal government that you can trust. Because in America, we have rules that know that our pilots are safe. They've gone under psychiatric treatment. They have the hours needed to experience.
Well, we've done the best we
But
can. I mean, let's be honest,
Europe.
Scottie. We've done the best we can. You never know, anything can happen, right? I mean, human nature itself
That's
just basically
true.
indicates that.
But if some of these, this brings up the question of psych evaluation, something that you deal with the gun control issue here at home, but definitely abroad. And in Europe right now, they have a lot less regulations when it comes to their international flights. This might spark that debate and open it up and say, okay, for safety standards, we don't need to make it as easy for our pilots to be in the air. I think that's what's going to be good. But I agree with the sensationalist journalists. We still have to be responsible people. But unfortunately, in this day where everybody's fighting to get that top story and get the top views, sometimes people are pushed over the edge.
Well, they can tell the folks at One Network that at least we know where this plane is, all right, if they want to go ahead and continue coverage. 60 seconds left. Let me just throw this in on a related issue here very briefly. Scottie, to you first, 30 seconds. They want to arm the TSA workers. The union says, let's give them weapons. Is that a good idea?
You know, it can be a good idea if you give them proper training. I don't want to have just the secretaries, the normal entry-level jobs that we have right now for TSA where they just guide people through. I want to see them trained just like you would have any other law enforcement, and then I would say I think it's a good idea.
All right, now, Ari, you think it's a good idea? Because I'll tell you, there are some people out here going, what, you want to put more guns in the airport now?
Well, I'm fine as long as they have proper training. But I'll tell you this, I was flying back from San Francisco a few weeks ago, and the agent at the security gate didn't know that a District of Columbia license plate meant Washington, D.C., thought I was traveling on a foreign ID. So my faith in some of those airport security people, not the highest.
When they said that to you, what did you say back to them?
I started quizzing them on geography. It ended up in a 5-minute conversation that had a supervisor come over and explain that Washington is the capital of our country.
No, please, really, wait.
And a magical strip search, too.
Let's stop right there, because if we get into geography and what happens in the public schools for the last 20 or 30 years, we could start a whole new discourse here, and we could all be in trouble. So, but it's a good point, too. They didn't know what it was. Ari, please hang on. Scottie, Nell, please hang on as well. We're going to come back. Third part of this edition of The Arena. Police-worn body cameras appear to be working in one city. And should Jews form a mafia to fight anti-Semitism? It's coming up right here on The Arena. Last call for first half of The Arena, host of The Agenda every morning on SiriusXM, which I do have in my car, by the way. Ari Rabin-Havt joins us, and veteran political commentator, columnist, news director for the Tea Party News Network, Scottie Nell Hughes. Scottie, let's start with you on this one. The use of body cameras by San Diego police has led to, fewer complaints by residents and less use of force by officers. I found it interesting that complaints against the cops have fallen over 40%. Now, I'm not going to try to be on one side or the other here, but doesn't it tell you something that when people know that they are being recorded, maybe they will back up just a little bit?
Exactly. This can be a win-win situation for both parties. The biggest question you have to wonder, is this property, is the camera, the videotape that is taken, is it abuse to public use? Can you go in and request and say, you know what, I think I need to see the video from that? Or is this something that the police department owns themselves and does not necessarily have to release? I think that's the debate that we're going to see growing right now. But I agree. You know what, I think it's every community needs to decide if they can afford it for themselves. But in this case, it's showing that putting that investment into the police officers is actually paying off.
Ari, isn't it also then part of that other side? Because certainly while this helps to keep the cops honest, it basically may even keep the citizenry honest right now, because if they know they're involved and they're being videotaped, they may stop what I like to call many times cop arrogance.
Look, I think it's a win-win. I think Scottie's right. I think, look, if citizens know that their actions are on tape, if police know their actions are on tape, there's no he said, she said debates. It's here's the video, here's what happened, there's no debate, here's a shot, this is what went on, and I think it helps everybody all around. It helps good cops be good cops. It helps catch bad people doing bad things.
Oh, wait, now let me stop you right there. Well, let me stop you right there. It helps stop bad people from doing bad things. Isn't that something that gets overlooked a lot by the media, where basically a lot of times it goes right to the problems with the cops? And let's be honest, there are bad cops and good cops. But a lot of times, isn't it our society who basically takes the cop and basically throws a tremendous amount of arrogance at him right now? And a lot of times, not every time, but a lot of times pushes the situation, and maybe this would stop that.
Look, I think people do stupid things all the time. I can only be accountable for my personal behavior. My last interaction with a police officer was, frankly, I was driving 20 miles over the speed limit, going down a highway. Police officer pulled me over, said, "Do you know what you did?" I said, "Absolutely, officer. Here's my license and registration." And frankly, it was a very positive interaction. That's how I like to interact with people. Other people interact poorly with police officers, and there are problems. Other times there are bad police officers doing bad things, and there are citizens doing bad things to police officers. And I think the cameras help us capture all of this and let us come to these conclusions. I think Scottie's also right. There are real questions over who owns this footage and when can citizens access it, which is a real question to answer.
We are getting a lot of rights going on here right now. Scottie, Nell, I'm going to throw to you.
I know we've got to disagree somewhere here.
Got to disagree.
You made an excellent point.
What I'm doing, I'm trying to find that
something to disagree.
somewhere. All right, wait a minute. Here comes the next one for you, Scottie. Nell, we're having some transmission problems right now. I can't see your face, but we can hear you just fine. And I'm going to go ahead and quote this. By the way, people, this is a quote. Don't get angry with me on this one, all right? It's going to include a word that some of you may not like, but it's a news quote. This was Harvey Harvey Weinstein, who's the big Hollywood movie mogul, told a packed audience at the Simon Wiesenthal Center on Tuesday night the way to combat the new wave of anti-Semitism is to, quote, stand up and kick these guys in the ass, unquote. That's a quote from the Los Angeles Times. What do you think, Scottie? He's basically saying, let's start a Jewish mafia, and he used that word.
No, you can tell there's a lot of frustration right now amongst the Jewish community, and he actually has the guts to actually speak it out. Whether it's politically correct or not, it's his First Amendment right to say it, but I think it speaks to a larger picture. When you have the Prime Minister of Israel coming over here and getting Democrats walking out in a press conference held afterwards saying why they didn't want to attend, when you're getting this whole love for Iran, whole love for communist Cuba, you're getting all this love for everybody except for our number one ally in this world, the number one people that we should be protecting, and because they want to protect us, you can tell there's some frustrations. So you know what, I think this is great that he said it. I hope it opens up the conversation and dialogue as to how much anti-Semitism really does exist in this country in regards to not necessarily how we treat the Jewish people here at home, but more importantly, how they're being treated abroad.
Ari, though, he's coming out and he's basically putting it right in the face of people saying that we've got to go out and protect ourselves. I don't really see anything wrong with it, but some people are going to say that maybe he's being a little bit too militant about it all. I don't think so.
Well, first off, it's Harvey Weinstein, so you expect kind of bombastic statements from him. That's his style. I think most Jews would say, we had a mafia, it was Murder Incorporated, Arnold Rothstein, etc. We don't really need that anymore. I think we've had some great groups over the years take the Jewish community from a place 100 years ago where a common sign was no Jews or dogs allowed, which to where we are today. Look, having faced anti-Semitism myself, I think we have to be careful to differentiate legitimate criticism of a foreign country, which is Israel, which happens in the Jewish community. Some of the most vigorous debate about Benjamin Netanyahu's place as prime minister is actually in the Jewish community. And personally, as a Jewish person, as somebody whose family has fought in multiple wars in Israel, both pre-statehood and during statehood, I can say I'm not happy with the prime ministership of Benjamin Netanyahu, nor are a lot of my relatives, nor a lot of the people I know in Israel. I think that is a legitimate debate to have, but hatred and bigotry is unacceptable. Organizations like the Anti-Defamation League have fought against it for 100 years and now say the way we fight against anti-Semitism is by fighting against all hatred. Hatred based on race, hatred based on national origin, hatred based on sexuality. And when we fight against all hatred, we can eliminate it all. That's the Anti-Defamation League, and I tend to agree with them.
I've got 1 minute left, and here I'm going to throw this at you from each of you. I need about 20 seconds. On MSNBC, one of the guests, Jamila Lemieux, said nothing says let's go kill some Muslims like country music. Fresh from Lynchburg, Virginia. Someone who obviously does not want to be a polarizing candidate. He wants to bring people together. I mean, really, that's absurd. But nothing says let's go kill some Muslims like country music. Ari, 30 seconds. Go.
I was surprised Ted Cruz came out and endorsed the Dixie Chicks, personally. After 9/11, I was surprised. He said, I assume when he said country, he was talking about them. I mean, look, people make stupid statements all the time. Clearly, that's not all of country music. Clearly, that's not most or the majority or the overwhelming 99.9% of music or country music or whatever. Okay. I'm sure there are some people who say that, but it's clearly a false statement.
Scottie, 20 seconds to you on that comment.
Real quick, being from Nashville, this made me outraged. Let's say it was the reverse. Let's say it was somebody maybe on RTV, World TV, who said the same thing about maybe urban music, and it said, that they just show about wanting to kill others. There would be outrage. She should be actually. I'm glad they apologized, but at the same time, you need to hold the same standard to the other.
They did apologize. We will point that out, but my goodness, what a foolish thing to say. Ari Rabin-Havt, Scottie, Nell, Hughes, thank you so much for joining us. I look forward to seeing you both again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. It was a slow start to the nation's severe weather season, but if there's one thing Mother Nature has taught us, it's that weather can change in an instant, and it can turn deadly without any warning. More on this with Jessica Reyes and your Newsmax National Weather Update.
Hi, I'm Jessica Reyes. Here's your weather across the nation for your Thursday as we get closer into the weekend. Looks like some weather records should be challenged for today, actually temperature records. Daytime high of 83 for today in San Jose, 94 degrees for Los Angeles. Meanwhile, for today by the Great Lakes, not so much, not as hot because we are dealing with temperatures that are pretty much well below freezing. Daytime highs only reaching the lower 20s across the Great Lakes. And we dealt with some severe tornadic activity yesterday into parts of Oklahoma City, into parts of Oklahoma overall, most of that is out of there, and we're feeling a lot cooler conditions for Little Rock, Arkansas, Wichita as well. But those showers and thunderstorms continue moving anywhere between the Gulf of Mexico into parts of the northeastern portion of the country. Speaking of the Northeast, here's your weather for today, some weekend forecasts, and your daytime highs.
Where in some areas of the country, it's like summer never left. One arena closes, another opens. The chilling news coverage of an allegedly deliberate downing of a passenger plane over the French Alps and more, which you won't expect, coming up next on The Arena.